Alright everyone, the video's a little bit scattered today because I did get woken up at 5 a.m. by the baby deciding, hey, I'm your alarm clock today. I decided to malfunction. Anyway, unfortunately, we have unhappy news to report first and foremost. Quite a bit today, actually, on news. I'm not going to do a live stream, so I'm going to make an extra exclusive, I think, in lieu of that, because I just don't have the energy right now. I'm going to take a nice long shower. U.S. forces have attacked Syrian positions in the last 24 hours. Actually, only a few hours ago. It was breaking when I first got up. It had only happened about an hour prior. U.S. troops had conducted airstrikes on several Syrian targets. Now, the good news is that one of them was just like an ammo dump. Nobody really cares about that. I mean, it is an act of war. You've bombed a foreign sovereign nation. But as we saw with the Syrian air base strikes under Trump, which I condemned, and you can remember that, any antagonism at the moment I think is unhelpful. This was in retaliation, though, really for Iran's actions. That is that Iranian-backed groups within the region have attacked U.S. targets a number of times over the last few weeks, over a dozen actual attacks, mostly involving suicide drones. So the drone is strapped with an explosive. You fly it in, you blow it up next to the target, and hope to cause damage. And so the United States has decided to retaliate. I oppose this because I don't think we should be in the region to begin with. And I said this under Trump as well. I applauded him for drawing down troops in Syria. He would have drawn them down far further, except that his own envoy decided to, again, lie to him about the troop totals that were actually in the country at the time. That story got buried really, really quickly, you'll note, years ago when it first came out. I wonder why. It's a total coincidence. We should not be operating in Syria. We don't have the will of the actual government that's there. It doesn't matter that it's effectively a one-party authoritarian state. We get along with one-party authoritarian states in other parts of the world, and it's hypocritical and disingenuous when they claim that that's the reason that we have a problem with Assad. We deal with Xi Jinping and the Chinese. That's a one-party state run by a strongman who effectively has been elected for life. That's because it has a large trade output. It has goods and services that we need. Syria doesn't. We've got our own fuel, and that's mainly what Syria is about. It's about oil and things like that. And so that's expendable. It's perfectly fine to maintain a military presence again in a country where you are not welcome, because we happen to prior have backed a group of militants, Islamo-fascist militants nonetheless, in the nation of Syria, which is the FSA. The FSA were simply outshadowed by ISIS because ISIS was more brutal. And so a lot of people thought, well, the FSA are freedom fighters. They want democracy. No, they didn't. No, they wanted a localized Islamic state as opposed to ISIS wanting effectively an international caliph state, and that was the fundamental difference. I like it when people don't understand what happened in Syria, and to an extent still happening with their ongoing civil war. What it basically boiled down to was Assad wants the effectively mostly secular regime. It's authoritarian. It's kind of sort of an elected system, but not really. It's more of a dynastic monarchy than anything. And then you have the FSA, which wanted Islamofascism, but it wanted it to be Syria first, Islamofascism. And then you had ISIS that wanted it to be part of a caliph state. So Syria no longer exists. You're part of an organized Islamic state specifically across the Middle East. We should not be operating in that region. ISIS has been pounded into near irrelevance at this point. They still exist, mainly in Libya and a few other places. But they've been muscled out by a lot of other groups, mainly because of Donald Trump's efforts in drawing back U.S. involvement and allowing the Iranians and other groups to pound the crap out of them. ISIS is no longer particularly a threat. The FSA was never an ally of the United States, unless you go by Obama's vendetta against democracy in the region. Basically, the sort of quasi-oligarchic authoritarian figures that nonetheless maintain some degree of secularity, like a Saddam Hussein or a Gaddafi. They need to go in order for other groups that have localized nationalistic but ultimately Islamo-fascist intent in mind, and that became the problem. It failed in Egypt, thankfully. Otherwise, Egypt would definitely be part of the East Bloc right now. It failed in Tunisia. It largely failed in Syria, although again, fighting is ongoing. But there's really no role for U.S. combat within that region. If you want to not be disingenuous, just put troops in Israel at this point. Why the fuck are they in Syria? It doesn't even make sense. Syria is not directly part of that fight. Yes, Hezbollah crosses around the region. Yes, there are militant groups there that are backed by the Iranians. Yes, Assad gets on well with the Iranians. But that doesn't mean that U.S. troops need to be involved. I mean, again, these people, as far as the warmongering itself goes, I think are being evil. And this is not an either-or situation. I think it was Ian Miles Cheong the other day was asking, well, is the U.S. Government evil or incompetent? I think it was him that conducted that poll. Why not have both? I think it's two-layered. The evil part is the warmongering. The evil part is that the Biden administration right now wants a war to be involved in order to salvage his political career. The powers that be for years have been talking about wanting to strike Iran or Iran's proxies or so forth. Milley had handed that paper to Trump, which again, I'll always refer to, that allegedly called for a plan to be drawn up to attack the Iranians preemptively, which no sane person would want to do. On that token, it's evil. But as far as understanding the fallout, or the potential fallout, and I mean that in the literal radioactive sense, unfortunately, to some degree, of such a regional war. So you've got Iran involved potentially. You've got maybe Syria involved. They've got anti-ship missiles from Russia that we can't necessarily counter, and we got several aircraft carrier groups in the region within range right now. The Lebanese government could collapse or something. Hezbollah's there. You've got Hamas. Egypt and Turkey are kind of straddling the fence and not 100% sure which way they're going to lean. I think in the end Egypt leans towards west and Turkey actually leans towards the east at this point, despite the fact that they're in NATO. That would be bad, by the way. You could end up with a massive regional war in which any U.S. assets that aren't in a country that is on our, so they're in Syria or something, or Iraq, it ends up, Eastern Sphere or independent, so to speak, or just completely destabilizes, they get slaughtered. That would lead to a massive, massive war beyond simply, well, we invaded Iran. It would be larger than that. It would be even worse. And that's sort of the doomsday scenario that a lot of people are talking about. Okay, the U.S. goes to war with Iran, maybe Russia gets involved or something, we end up with the missiles drawn up. I think it could be worse than that. It doesn't even need to involve nuclear weapons. So what they're doing right now by striking Syrian forces in retaliation for attacks on U.S. troops that are in areas where they're clearly unwelcome to begin with, my question would be, why are the troops there? Why are we continuing to put, relatively small groups of men, a few hundred men here, a few thousand men there, in harm's way in areas that are effectively overrun? I don't think that it's wise. I think that it's being done on purpose. I think this is one-upsmanship and brinksmanship of the ultimate kind, and I don't see how it's helpful for anyone other than the war pigs, which is probably the point, because they want to make money. The problem is, in their evil plot to make a lot of money off arms dealing and stuff, they could end up triggering an actual legit World War III scenario, end up with a war that goes beyond just the Iranians. And, millions of people dying would be the least of your worries at that point, because it could be with a B instead of an M at that stage. That's about all. Peace out.